Good day, all, and welcome to my triple Doctor Who review. Today we're looking at episodes 3 to 5 of Series 10. Originally my plan had been that I was going to do these one a week. We'll see if I go back to that. I don't know. And yeah, sorry, the mic is jostling in the background. So we'll start with Knock Knock, and I actually did record a review of this one, but to be honest, I was completely unhappy with it, and haven't actually been able to get back to do anything until now. Sorry, clearing my throat. So, Knock Knock. Well, the show starts off with a pop song, or pop music in the background, and doesn't really improve from there much. So in this episode, we learn that apparently the Doctor is uncool because he's old. So I guess the program is telling us that unless you're a 20-something hipster, you're uncool. Thanks for that. I guess the only reason I can think as to why they would have put this in here is to kind of cater to the people that don't like Capaldi because he's old, because they really don't know what to do with this show right now. I'm almost wondering if my theory is that it wasn't actually Capaldi's choice to leave the show. I think he was largely forced out. And to be honest, the show, it's kind of in a downward spiral right now. It's not completely terrible, but it's not the show that it was. Not in the Matt Smith era, and definitely not in the Eccleston-Tennant era. That era of the show was a completely different animal than what we're looking at right now. So, the plot of this particular episode I found to be somewhat unoriginal, nothing we haven't seen before. It seems Moffat chose a theme of the week, in this case, haunted house story, but I could pretty much predict where this was probably going to go. The episode wasn't really scary at all. It devolved into, to be honest, emotional drivel at the end, or such an abrupt change in tone, which it's one of the many issues that I'm having with the Moffat era. Now, we've seen this before, but I don't know, now 10 years into it, 10 seasons, really 12 years into it, it's jarring. And the show, it's just repeating the same things over and over again. It doesn't seem to be doing anything original. And then at the end of this, we see yet another reset ending. So nobody dies. So this is not the first time we've seen the reset ending this season. So really, it was a haunted house story that wasn't really a haunted house story, wasn't scary at all, and everything was basically just erased at the end. And probably the biggest problem I had with this is the supporting cast was absolutely horrendous. All of them. It was awful, to the point of almost being unwatchable. So I guess I need to give these ratings. Knock Knock. Well, was there anything good about it? It looked good. Visually, it had a nice theme kind of going, so I'll give it that. But this one we're going to give a 5 out of 10. Doctor Who really isn't doing well this year in my ratings. Okay, and now on to Oxygen. This one wasn't really original either. This was a typical base under siege story. This could have been cool, say, 6 or 7 years ago, but now it's nothing that we haven't seen many times before. Just remove some of the characters, remove some of the events in the episode, and I might actually even do a video kind of looking at each of these episodes and comparing them to very similar episodes that have occurred in the past. I'm not going to do it here, but stay tuned. I'm going to have another number of Doctor Who videos coming out where I kind of go into, again, what is right with the series, which really is not that much right now, and where now with evidence in Season 10, where I really see the show faltering. And I know there's still people out there that like it, and I'm perfectly happy for you. And to be honest, I still like the show, but not this era. It's not resonating with me. I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But here's the biggest problem with Oxygen, and this I will present as hard evidence that Doctor Who is definitely in trouble. So the official UK ratings came out this morning, just a couple hours I think before I recorded the video. 5.27 million. This is the lowest rated Doctor Who episode since the show came back in 2005. And no episode since the pilot has actually gotten over 6 million. And this did not happen in the previous 9 series. Could it be the inclusion of... Well, it's a number of things, but one thing that's definitely really throwing me off the show is, again, in this episode, we see social justice content about race just thrown in because it had to be there. I guarantee you lost a lot of viewers over this because a lot of us are sick of this shit. Okay. Extremists. Now, this is the better out of the 3, but the plot, pacing, everything was still sloppy and, to be honest, somewhat all over the place. It's a typical Moffat-style episode, which, 7 years into it, it's getting old now. Moffat, he seems to have 2 styles of writing. Absolutely horrifically bad Christmas specials, and just overly confusing plot lines. It's almost an arrogance on his part when you actually analyze it. It's almost like he's trying to talk down to the audience. Sorry, Moffat, but Doctor Who really isn't meant to be a puzzle. Again, this is one reason that people are leaving the show. If they don't know what's going on, they don't care. Now, you can obviously figure the episode out, but he needs to be a little bit clearer in his writing. This is where Russell T Davies had it right. Well, there definitely were some issues with series 1 through 4. He knew how to reach everyone. He could write good episodes that weren't too confusing for the masses, but not too dumbed down for, I guess, if you want to call them intellectual Doctor Who fans. Well, the occasional misstep, farting aliens and such. But this Moffat style, it's getting old now. So the basic story, Veritas, it's a text that causes readers to kill themselves. We meet the Pope, so forth and so forth. And then this was another thing that disappointed me. This whole vault thing, I wasn't really that interested anyway, because I knew it wasn't going to be that interesting. And I was hoping I was going to be wrong because I wanted to actually be surprised by the show again for the first time in a long time. But my theory was it was going to be Missy in the vault. I was hoping Moffat was not going to go for the most obvious choice, but in this case he did. Which is also bad. So it's almost the other end of the coin. Very confusing, egocentric writing, but in the end, it's just the resolution, it's a lazy plot device. Now, we don't know for sure where this is going, but at the same time, it's too predictable. And my theory right now is the John Sim Master will somehow be summoned by Missy's master to release her. We'll see. Hopefully I'm not right in that. Hopefully Moffat will at least find some way to add some excitement or just some form of originality to this. So, yeah, I know my reviews of this series have overly been negative. In fact, most of what I've put up about Doctor Who this year is negative. But in the past, I would glorify the show without any major criticism. And you can watch my reviews of the past 2 series, especially Series 9. There were a lot of issues that I had while it was on, but I decided not to put them in my reviews, and they ended up being almost summaries of the episodes. Right now, the show is not in a good place. It's spiraling downwards. Like, it's not catastrophic, but there is definitely a trend downward in the ratings. And once you get below a certain level, there's a point of no return, which is what we saw happen back in the 1980s. Well, specifically with the Sylvester McCoy era. And it did improve drastically between season 24 and season 26, but by the time season 26 happened, the viewers were gone. And this is slowly what's happening here. Now, I'm also in Canada, so I'm not in the UK, but there used to be, even amongst people that I know, there used to be an excitement about the show. You know, it was new, it was interesting. I don't really hear anyone talking about it anymore. They've pretty much written it off. And, you know, there's a few reasons for this. One is franchise fatigue. It's now 12 years old. And I know the original series ran for 26 years, but it's a faster-paced society. Significantly. So that's always a factor. I think people are just getting tired of it. I think it's the fact that there was no clear direction for Capaldi, or they did have a direction and then they just jettisoned that by the time we got to Series 9. I think the inclusion of social justice and third wave feminism is making a lot of people leave the show. And these people are not going to be vocal about this because as soon as you criticize either these ideologies, at least publicly, you're the Antichrist. But I guarantee that's a factor. Not very original storytelling or writing. Moffat's, I think I'm just going to call it Moffat egocentrism, which is what we're seeing in these overly complex stories. And just the theme and tone of the show hasn't changed since Moffat took over, to the point that now I don't even enjoy the Matt Smith years as much as I once did, because I see all these tendencies now that are driving me insane. So the question is, when the show comes back under Chris Chibnall and another doctor, is it even salvageable? Because the problem is, once you lose an audience, it's very difficult to get that audience back. And the overnights for Extremis were a little bit higher than Oxygen, so there's going to be a slight rise, but I think we're going to see them go back down. And unfortunately, I think when we get into season 11, or series 11, I think it's going to be the same thing. I don't really sense a lot of excitement about a new doctor coming in. I think it's mainly because we've already had several changeovers of the Doctor. In 2005, it was a big deal because this was the first time we'd seen this in the new show. Ended up with David Tennant, who I'm back to considering the best of the new series Doctors. When Matt Smith came in, there was the anticipation around whether or not he was going to be able to live up to Tennant's legacy, which I think he did, at least in Series 5, not so much after that, but that wasn't really his fault. Then with the casting of Capaldi, there was an excitement around, okay, we're going back to the original series, this is going to be a different take on the Doctor. Now, with who's ever going to be cast this time, it's been done so many times now, even my own anticipation, I'm curious, but I'm not as excited as I had been in previous years. But anyway, so that's, ratings for Oxygen and Extremis. Oxygen, I'll be a little bit more generous. I'll give it a 6. It's not a terrible story. It's just not something that we haven't seen before. So Oxygen 6. Extremis, it was still probably the strongest episode since the pilot. So we'll give this one a 6.5. And I guess next week we're going to find out. I guess the Doctor's still blind. Honestly, it's a very odd choice for a plot thread, but we'll see where this is going. So that's it for this week. So as always, everyone, thank you for watching, and have yourselves a great day.